The Biden administration announced a new limited moratorium banning home evictions in the U.S. for another 60 days, based on areas hit hard by the coronavirus. A temporary ban on evictions expired a few days ago and put millions of people at risk of living on the street. Progressive politicians like Cori Bush, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Elizabeth Warren fought to keep the moratorium, which yielded a success. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued Tuesday's order for areas with high levels of COVID-19, covering about 90% of the nation's population. The CDC said it will expand protections to other areas if they see a rise in infections, as the Delta variant sweeps the country, mostly in the South. According to an Aspen Institute study, more than 15 million people in nearly 7 million households are behind on rental payments and collectively owe more than $20 billion to landlords. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said in a statement, quote, "This moratorium is the right thing to do to keep people in their homes and out of congregate settings where COVID-19 spreads." This new order protects renters through October 3rd, but almost certainly faces legal challenges. The National Apartment Association, which manages nearly 10 million rental units, sued the government last week for billions of dollars in unpaid rent. The group called the CDC's new order, quote, "an unfunded government mandate that forces housing providers to deliver a costly service without compensation and saddles renters with insurmountable debt." Biden has said the extension would give the federal government time to distribute unused, congressionally approved funds, over $40 billion, to help pay unpaid rent and ultimately keep people in their homes. He also acknowledged the legal risks of moving ahead, but said he'll leave it up to the courts.
Hello, white people. I'm on AlJazeera.com, trusted name in news. CDC issues new ban on evictions of most U.S. renters after protest. What protest? And CDC issues new ban? What? When did the CDC start governing over us? What the heck? Move sought by President Joe Biden after Congress fails to act on expired national ban of forced removals. Here is the potato in charge asking the CDC to issue a renewed ban on evictions of renters as COVID-19 cases spike in the United States. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has issued a new 60-day moratorium on rental evictions, a move the United States Public Health Agency said would protect about 90% of Americans. Are 90% of Americans renters? The announcement on Tuesday comes amid a surge of COVID-19 cases linked to the spread of the Delta variant and follows the expiration on July 31st of the CDC's previous ban on forced removals of millions of tenants who would have been unable to pay rent during the pandemic. The new ban applies specifically to U.S. counties with high levels of community transmission of the virus, the CDC said in a statement. Oh, whoops, it doesn't apply to everybody? I thought it said 90%. The emergence of the Delta variant has led to a rapid acceleration of community transmission in the United States, putting more Americans at risk, especially if they are unvaccinated, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky said. Is there somebody else like Polish, the kind of a similar name to that? President Joe Biden told reporters at the White House that the new eviction ban is intended to provide more time for renters and landlords to obtain financial assistance through a federal aid program administered by states and localities. Have you ever tried to get anything from the government? Yeah, you gotta know people. The goal is to avoid throwing somebody out of the street. Probably, I think they meant to say out on the street, to keep families in their apartments, kids in the same school district, and provide an opportunity for people to regain employment to pay their rent, Biden said. But we have a labor shortage, not a work shortage. The CDC measure drew applause from Democratic legislators who had pushed the White House to reinstate the moratorium, saying millions of vulnerable Americans would be forced out of their homes starting this week. Today is a day of extraordinary relief, Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, also known as Floppy Chops, said in a statement. The imminent fear of eviction and being put out on the street has been lifted for countless families across America. A small group of progressive Democratic legislators led by Representative Cori Bush had camped out on the steps of the U.S. House of Representatives to protest official inaction on the eviction ban after the congressional chamber left Washington, D.C. for a month-long recess. So this is Cori Bush. I love that jawline. It's sexy. And that brow ridge. The U.S. Representative Cori Bush camped outside the U.S. Capitol for days in protest of the expiration of the pandemic eviction moratorium. Well, she probably could have given somebody that watch to hawk so that they could pay their bills, but, these multimillionaires. The idea that we could go on recess and we could go on vacation as the House of Representatives while millions of people, upwards of 11 million people, 11 million, huh? Could end up being forced out of their homes. There was no way, absolutely no way, Bush told the MSNBC news outlet on Tuesday. Last month, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the CDC did not have the legal authority to extend an emergency moratorium on forced removals of people. Oh, look at this. They're actually reporting the news of people from their homes during the pandemic without specific authorization from Congress. Well, God bless SCOTUS. Biden said there was debate among constitutional scholars about the scope of the court's decision, reflecting some uncertainty among officials within the administration about its legal authority. What? Wow. But Democratic U.S. Representative Maxine Waters, I love her wig, questioned whether the Supreme Court decision was definitive and tweeted, "Every minute wasted means another family could be forced onto the streets." Biden, hashtag extend the moratorium now, she wrote on Tuesday. Love that wig she wears. Biden and other U.S. legislators hope such an extension would provide more time to speed distribution of $46.5 billion in rental relief for tenants and landlords already allocated by Congress to U.S. states. 46, that's Biden's number. He's the 46th president, isn't he? By the time it gets litigated, it will probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are in fact behind on the rent and don't have the money, Biden said. He also called on state and local governments to extend or put in place statewide and local eviction bans for the next 2 months. Such bans already cover about a third of the U.S. Meanwhile, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said on Tuesday that it doesn't seem to me to require any additional legislative action to get the money out there. That's already been made available, so it can solve the problem. More than 6.5 million U.S. households are currently behind on $20 billion in rental payments, according to a study by the Aspen Institute and the COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project. The COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project. Boy, these people are quick to make up their phony little nonprofits, aren't they? Now let's look at another article here. Now I'm on Politico. State and local aid bottlenecks leave renters exposed. Lawmakers made clear they were losing patience with the pace of aid delivery, but they offered few solutions for the long-running problem. An attempt by House Democrats and the Biden administration to push governors and mayors to accelerate the release of billions of dollars in rental aid is meeting a harsh reality. Most localities are ill-equipped for the moment. Among the problems that states and cities face, untested new infrastructure rife with red tape, local officials' fears of being singled out for awarding funds to the wrong people, and the fact that millions of tenants and landlords do not even know about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, much less how to apply for it. The workload at the local level was much greater than people appreciate, said Michael Thurman, CEO of DeKalb County, Georgia, which had distributed 11% of its funds as of last Thursday. We had to create basically another government just to manage the COVID response. Wow. We had to create basically another government to manage the COVID response. What a weird thing to say. What does that even mean? And state and local bottlenecks threaten to leave millions of struggling renters at risk of homelessness without the backstop of a federal eviction moratorium. Well, we have a shortage of workers. I don't understand this. The Biden administration let the ban expire last week before reviving a targeted 2-month prohibition on Tuesday in response to a mounting political outcry. President Joe Biden, Speaker House Speaker Nancy Floppy Chops Pelosi and other federal officials this week continued to prod governors and mayors to speed up aid in the interim, but it was unclear whether the pressure would make a difference. The urgency of addressing state and local slowdowns was not expected to go away as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention revived the modified eviction moratorium Tuesday. The Supreme Court signaled in June that the CDC overstepped its authority when it imposed the ban in September, leaving it vulnerable to further legal challenges by landlords who argued that it cost them billions of dollars each month. Biden said Tuesday he was urging states to distribute aid to the landlords. Biden said Tuesday he was urging states to distribute aid to the landlords. Well, God bless Biden and his urging. I believe that would take care of the vast majority of what needs to be done to keep people in their apartments now, he said. That's what we're working on. Brother. Congress authorized $46.5 billion in assistance to pay down struggling tenants' back rent and make landlords whole in a bid to prevent a rash of evictions once the national eviction ban imposed during the pandemic crisis lapsed. But state and local governments, which received the money from grants distributed by Treasury, had dispersed just a fraction of the funds when the moratorium expired over the weekend. As of the end of June, just 6.5% of the money had been dispersed. Lauren Lowry, Program Director for Housing and Community Development at the National League of Cities, said officials were afraid of making missteps while distributing an unprecedented sum of money through programs that were created overnight. City officials want to be sure that they have the proper documentations, we just say documentation, to deploy all this funding, Lowry said. That comes with most federal programs, wanting to do this right, wanting to not receive criticism about how it was deployed, she added. Okay, now this is starting to sound sketchy. Lowry said this group's members, including mayors and other leaders, have pressed for more clarity about the rules and more flexibility from Treasury. The department has released updated guidance to ease the distribution of funds in response to feedback. White House Senior Advisor Gene Sperling, coordinator of the American Rescue Plan, said on Monday that while he could appreciate the lack of existing infrastructure at the state and local level, there is no excuse for continued slow delivery at this point. Sperling criticized jurisdictions that he said made the application process too complex despite Treasury guidance in May and June intended to help simplify aid applications. I understand the challenges they were facing, but right now there is no excuse for somebody having a complicated application process, he said. There is no excuse for somebody to have excessive documentation. Your government has told you that you can create very simple application processes, and you're able to see that your peers in other states and cities are successfully implementing this. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, because the P is silent in Psaki, just like the P is silent in President, President Biden on Tuesday praised Texas and Virginia for their relatively quick distribution of funds. But even in those states, renters have continued to struggle to pay their bills. Texas had more than 600,000 tenants who reported being behind on rent in July, according to the latest census survey. Where are these surveys and who's filling them out? More than 100,000 tenants in Virginia were behind. 31% of the 4.7 million adult tenants in Texas and 15% of the 1.1 million adult tenants in Virginia said they had no or slight confidence in their ability to make next month's rent, according to the survey. Part of the problem has been lack of awareness among potential aid recipients, with housing advocates particularly concerned about low-income tenants and mom-and-pop landlords without national trade groups. More than half of renters and 40% of landlords did not know about the existence of federal assistance in a study released by the Urban Institute in June. Stockton Williams, executive director of the National Council of State Housing Agencies, said some state programs that have dispersed a small share of the total they were given still serve between 35% and 45% of the tenants who applied for relief. Advocates and federal officials said that the low recognition of the program made it even more important to make the application process a smooth one. This is the time where we want to especially say there's no excuses, Sperling said Monday. If it works in some places, there's no reason it can't work in every place. Lawmakers in Washington made clear this week they were losing patience with the pace of aid delivery, but they offered few solutions for the long-running problem. The dilemma made the eviction ban's revival even more urgent for some Democrats. Floppy Chops Pelosi, who, with other House Democrats, was briefed by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on the state of the aid Tuesday. Really? On the state of the aid, okay. Said the brand new moratorium will provide time for the money allocated by Congress to flow. You know, we've pumped a fair amount of money into this, Senator John Tester, Democrat Montana, said. We should make sure the money gets on the ground. Senate Banking Chair Sherrod Brown, D. Ohio, said he had spoken with Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge. Oh, God, these names, Fudge. This week about his own concerns with the delivery of rental assistance. Brown said he was talking to colleagues about efforts to speed up those governors. Asked if state and local programs could move more quickly, Brown replied, of course they can. And now here is what the mainstream media is not telling you. This law, it's not even a law. This, whatever it is, because the CDC isn't a governing body, whatever this mandate is, it isn't applied automatically. You have to apply for it. You have to fill out what's called a declaration form, and you have to meet the requirements of that declaration form, or else you're going to be denied. And then you have to put forth some effort to be able to pay your rent, and you can't get out of your rent. It won't be forgiven. You will have to make up for lost payments or missed payments. And then if you do all this work and you fill out this form for your landlord and they violate the law and they still kick it law. Why am I calling it a law? This article I'm looking at keeps calling it a law, but if the landlord still kicks you out, the landlord could be prosecuted and convicted, and if convicted will be fined up to $250,000 and jailed for up to a year. How about that? Landlords have absolutely no rights, it looks like. But anyway, people who are getting screwed besides tenants who have to fill out all this ridiculous government paperwork. It's a lot. I don't know if you've ever looked at government paperwork. They make it so convoluted. And then I'm reading on social media that people who've been faithful about paying their rent, even though they've really struggled, there's more jobs than there are workers, but people who struggled to pay their rent and they've run out of money, they're getting 30-day notice because their houses are being sold. It's a hot market. It's a seller's market right now. And anyway, so nobody wins, especially the landowners, when government has massive overreach. All right, white people, that's the damage for now. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to your thoughts below.